Thank you very much for joining us here today with the interview with the Global Agenda. My first question to you, Alexandre, is why are social aspects so important for livestock keeping?
Social aspects are important because in most of the areas where grasslands are developed and where livestock systems are developed, it's mainly on semi-arid areas where no other agricultural activity can be carried on because there is not enough rainfall, so you can't grow crops. So the only activity where you can use the natural resources is livestock. So these livestock activities are really the main way to organize societies. So most of the society there in semi-arid areas are living from livestock. And so the way, if you want these communities to be in peace and to have a decent livelihood, then you have to support them and to give them the opportunity to develop their activities and to bring to them the services they need.
How do you actually measure the value of grasslands?
To measure the values and the multiple values of grasslands is really an issue because most of the time people are measuring the impact of livestock activities in grassland through their livestock production, so through milk production, through meat production, and this is most of the time the only values that people are taking care of. But the other values are not taken into account, so most of the time these values are very much underestimated. So what we want to do really is to develop a methodology so that we are able to measure the other values. So, and these values are not only quantitative value. Of course, you can measure economic return, you can measure the quantity of product that people are delivering. You can, in some time, measure the environmental impact, the amount of carbon sequestration, for example, the amount of greenhouse gas emission, the amount of species, the quantity of different species, animal, vegetation, which are present in rangeland. But some aspects, some values, and especially social values, are quite difficult to measure. The way that livestock activity are organizing societies allow them to have social networks, social services, and social relationships with others. These are things which are not so easy to measure. So what we are trying to do now, really, working together with the different stakeholders who are involved in this grassland development, is to find ways to show to others what are these different values and how we can assess these values in some way. So that's the reason why we are developing at the moment a multi-functionality model who will be able to measure in the same time these different values, kind of values, and to show people that grassland is not only for livestock production, but is also for economic, local development and social development.
So I would assume that you probably have social scientists on board in your team, and that you look at what the social fabric is on the grasslands of the communities, and I suppose you need to look into how can you say the cultural value of the community the way it is right now, and then certain norms and ideals probably come in, and that's difficult to measure, obviously, because you need to know what is good and what is bad. So maybe you can give us a little bit of an idea how you try to do it, actually, the measuring.
Yeah, you're perfectly right. This assessing the social value is not so easy, and of course you can involve social scientists to do that, and that's the way we are doing this job. But of course you have also to work with pastoralists and livestock breeders, because they know what are their expectations from livestock and grasslands, and so you have to ask them and to work with them to be able to identify these real social and cultural values, and then once you have identified these values, then you can try to find some indicators or to find some ways to well, to value them really, and after that, these social values are very important in terms of peace and in terms of social functioning of these societies on the ground. And if you think about the present situation in most of these semi-arid areas in Africa, dealing with terrorism and so on, one of the reasons why these societies are not so much in peace at the moment is that there have been so few attention bring to these systems and very few investment in these areas. And so these people couldn't be able to develop their livestock activity, so they had to find some other ways to live.
When it comes to something like grasslands that looks like communal ground, so it's not one private owner usually, I suppose, then it becomes difficult with the investment. What would you say, what are the usual obstacles with investment into this?
Yeah, I think the main obstacle to investment is that people doesn't identify what are the returns from these rangeland areas. If you think only about livestock production, the livestock production is quite low in these areas, of course, because the potential of this, production potential of these areas in semi-arid part of Africa or Asia or Latin America is very low. So you can't see, if you only think about productive value, so it's very low. But you have much more than that. I mean, livestock production. But if you take into account all the other values in terms of biodiversity, of course, in terms of environment, in terms of social organization, social peace, and development of this, because of these people, because there are millions. So if you allow these people to develop their societies and their environment, then you have other return like peace, like commercial activities, which is very low at the moment because there is a lack of connection, between these societies in semi-arid area and the whole market of animal production.
Brings me to the next point, policy change. That's a critical area. Everybody wants to change policy because that's sort of the input level into politics and how the laws and everything, is supposed to be done. The classic way of governance is through policy that becomes law and then things fall into place. What is your idea? How can you actually change policy agendas on your subjects, on your causes?
Yeah, so this is really a main point, is how to bring policymakers on our team, and there's different ways to do that. One of the first thing is explaining these policymakers these multiple values of grassland, because they are not aware of that. That most of the time they are only speaking about these livestock production values and that's all. So, and that one of the reasons of that by the past we had many drought impacting these areas, and we had a lot of discussions and a lot of messages by that time, 10 or 20 years ago, so that these areas were nothing for the production, nothing for the economy. We had better to work with other areas, more humid, with more potential. So most of the people which are now in ministries and policy decision places have all these ideas in mind. So we have to inform these people. We have to increase their capacity and their knowledge on what really, how these grassland systems are working, how they are doing, and what are the multiple values linked to these systems, and how they can contribute to the livestock production, because there is this big increase in livestock demand, and this will carry on for until 2050. So I think that really this grassland system can contribute to this livestock production.
If you take it one step further, how can the global agenda for sustainable livestock help you with that?
To work with the policymakers, the global agenda for sustainable livestock as a multi-stakeholder platform is really a very good place to do this kind of job, you know, to share information, to share the result of studies on different type of livestock system, and especially on grassland systems. It's a place where we can build together tools. How do we work on this grassland? How do we measure? How do we assess the values of grassland? What are the relevant indicators?
And we spoke about social benefits already, for obvious reasons. This is also the subject of the multi-stakeholder party meeting in Addis. Can you maybe tell us a little bit how you feel that this sort of subject can actually be promoted in that meeting?
One of the topics, of course, will be this restoring values to grassland and identify the multiple values of grassland. So there we will be able to organize our activities, to build action plans, to go for assessment of these values, of multiple values of grassland. Now we have a draft methodology to assess these multiple values, and in Addis we expect to find and to identify on which pilot site we are going to do the job, and to be able to show and to assess and to show to all the stakeholders what are these values, and to be able to then to elaborate some, of course, documents, but not only, elaborate some films. We are doing some films on these values and show that to the people.
Do you have one sneak preview, one result that you can share already?
Well, a single result is not easy to define, but for example, we make films in different parts of Europe, Brazil, and Canada, and even in Africa, and it was so pleasant to see that when you interview people on what are their expectation, what are the main value that they express from grassland. So you have different point of view, whether you are asking policymakers or breeders or local development, people involved in local policy making. So this brings all these different values, and then be able to have a comprehensive description of the complexity of these systems, but also be able to identify the main aspects that are important for the different stakeholders, and bring all that together and be able to define what will be the way to develop these systems.
Thank you very much.